Awesome. Welcome everyone that is joining today's fireside chat. As you are joining today, feel free to pop a comment in the chat where you're tuning in from, something about your role, something about your work, something about your industry. Feel free to drop in so that everyone can be welcome and understand where you're dialing in from. We will get started in a few minutes. We'll give everyone a couple of minutes to join the conversation for today's webinar, acknowledging people will probably be coming across for some lunch whilst they check this out. In the background, we're just playing a little bit of insight into some things we're excited about and we'll be walking through today, and excited to have you all here. As you are all joining, feel free to drop a comment in the chat, where you're from, something about your world, the industry you're in, or where you're tuning in from. Love to know who's on the call today. Welcome, Suzanne. Oh, look at that. We have a high pressured pipeline standards team member joining in. Excited to see. Throughout the call today, if you have any questions at any time, please do not hesitate to drop them in the chat as we go. We will be moderating those and we will have ample time at the end for everyone to get some of those questions answered. And we would love to make this as engaging as possible. So please don't hesitate. Welcome, Brian. Dialing in, we have structural and civil engineers. Look at that. Fantastic. We'll just give it another minute and then we'll kick into today's session. If you're just joining, feel free to put in the chat where you're from, something that goes on in your world, company that you work for, or some of the projects or standards that you're interested in. We'd love to know who's here and what everyone's interested in. From Sydney, there you go. I'm dialing in from Melbourne today, so I'm sure we'll have a cross Australia distribution. Alrighty, we're about 4 minutes in. Structural engineer from Sydney. Welcome, Anthony. What we'll do is we'll get ourselves started today. We'd just like to kick us off by acknowledgement of country. In the spirit of reconciliation, on behalf of ClearCalcs and Standards Australia, as the host of this webinar, we would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of country throughout Australia and their connections to land, sea, and community. We pay our respects to their elders, past and present, and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples today. Welcome to today's fireside chat, Revolutionising Access to Construction Standards. I'm Alex McCall, the Head of Operations here at ClearCalcs, and today's fireside chat is a discussion focused on new technologies that make it easier for engineers to better access, understand, and use relevant engineering standards in real time. I'm excited to introduce Daniel Chidgey on the call today. He is the Head of Commercial Partnerships from Standards Australia. If you give us a wave, Daniel. Fantastic. And we have Chris Borzillo, the CEO at ClearCalcs. If you could also give us a wave. Good afternoon. In the next 40 minutes, we will hear from Daniel and Chris as to how their work is revolutionizing access to standards in construction. We'll conclude with 10 minutes of audience Q&A, and I'm going to aim to make this session as interactive as possible. So please feel free to ask your questions in the chat in the side of your Zoom window, and we will collaborate these over the course of the discussion. and we'll get answering those at the end and maybe even throughout if they're relevant in time. If you have any technical issues, my colleague Ati Aziz will be here to answer your questions. Again, feel free to put it in the chat. And without any more time, let's kick into things. So right off the bat, Daniel, can you tell me about your professional journey with Standards Australia and what some of the current challenges in industry you're working to solve are?
Sure thing. Thanks, Alex. And I probably should start kind of answer that question that I never imagined that I would be so deeply involved in the world of standards for over a decade. But I have had the opportunity to work with a number of different roles across the business, including standards development, working with our experts and committees, stakeholder engagement, industry leaders, and now in commercial partnerships. And it has been an incredible experience for me. You get the chance to work with many talented, passionate individuals across different organizations and companies. And for some, it might seem a bit odd what we do. So bringing together professionals, experts with all different agendas and interests, sometimes conflicting, and then trying to get them to agree on something. But at the end of the process, it results in a good thing. So I think we can create that meaningful guidelines to keep people safe, to keep things working, and it's a pretty rewarding experience. In my current role, of course, the focus is on establishing partnerships, and I'm very excited, to be here with the ClearCalcs team to talk about the innovation, and it's a real good example of what we've been chasing. But yes, like any organisation, we face challenges. For us, as a information provider, as we move forward, we need to be adaptable, and we need to continue to evolve to deliver dependable, valued solutions. A massive focus for us is keeping up with the times, anticipating trends, identifying different areas that would benefit from standards, and that could be in engineering and construction or emerging technologies like cybersecurity, the environment, of course, digital connectivity. And this is by no means an endless or easy task. People might have seen in the last week we've had white papers about the metaverse. In my 15 years, I didn't think Standards Australia would be talking about the metaverse, but we need to stay ahead of the curve in some of those emerging areas. And of course, another big challenge is, one of the reasons why, this partnership is so meaningful is in that fast-paced digital world, a one-size-fits-all standard, and having customers, control F-in or scrolling through PDFs, or even worse, having hard copy documents isn't going to meet the need of every industry and every use case. When I need to get information or an answer, I'd go to Google or YouTube to get something really quickly. And you never know, in the next few weeks, I might be asking ChatGPT or Bard or whatever the next AI terminology is. So it's really important for us at Standards Australia that we keep evolving and we keep finding solutions that meet the demands and the expectation of the users. So they're probably the two biggest challenges, Alex, that front of mind for me.
Wow. Fascinating. I would love to know in the chat if any engineers here have experimented using any AI tools for the engineering so far, because that sounds like it could make your lives a lot easier in some ways, shapes and forms.
We've experimented with it a little bit and it got everything wrong.
It got everything wrong. Okay, don't trust it just yet. Chris, that's probably a good segue there. As the CEO of a technology company focused on engineering, what do you see in terms of digital adoption and some of the collaborations required to make the shift?
Look, it's obviously, thank you very much, and everyone that's listening to us talk, always appreciate it. I love hearing myself talk, but I don't often get the compliment from others doing the same. I think echoing what Daniel said, it's so interesting talking about these PDFs and these hard copy documents. And I think I would be loath to try and claw a hard copy document out of an engineer's hand, because there's a lot that definitely love them. For us, really, it's not so much about positioning it as, or moving it forward as saying this is a like for like. It's about saying, what are you trying to access and how do we make this a little bit better? How do we change the experience? And so looking at standards, for example, the thing that strikes us, and obviously as a core business or a historical business has been creating calculators, and based on standards, our engineers live in standards every single day. And so it's recognizing that these things are interconnected. They quite often reference each other. Having a hard copy document, having a PDF doesn't really recognize that. To Dan's point, it doesn't necessarily mean it's searchable enough or the information's at your fingertips. And so I think it's interesting then looking at saying, well, not only how do we make that more connected, but also as an industry, what's necessary for us to move forward on innovation. So McKinsey Global release a report every 4 years on digitization and automation industry. Several years ago, they released a report and it had architecture, engineering, and construction as the second least digitized and automated industry on earth. Several years later, they've released the new version. It's now the least. It's been overtaken by agriculture and farming, and somehow miraculously hunting is several places higher on the list. So how might that happen, you ask? And I wonder, well, I think when you understand the reality of what engineering professionals in particular need to do, that they're not only managing very complex calculations and in construction phasing and everything else, we're literally in an industry where you cannot move fast and break things. So innovation is important. It is very important that we move forward, but we can't afford to, like some industries, I guess, just do totally new things and completely change it every day. Standards, how we do things, making sure people are on the same page is so important. And that's why your question about what collaboration is required, that's the key word, collaboration. So right now, why are we lagging in terms of innovation? There are a lot of stakeholders in the industry, we believe, that want innovation, that are pushing for innovation, but they're each islands of excellence. So the problem then becomes is that for a construction project to successfully come across, you need many, many people to collaborate. And so for us to innovate on these things, we need these collaborations. And that's where we're very excited about the partnership with standards, because hopefully it's two stakeholders and hopefully more coming together to say, how can we look at engineers' workflow? How can we identify, well, hey, when you're working on a calculator, quite often you have a standard open. So let's bring those together. And then I think just in particular from a macro trend perspective, we're seeing demand from our own customers from bring these things together, collaborate more, integrate these things. On a personal level, people now are so used to everything they're using being connected. You install a new application now and it says connect all the other things. They want that in their professional tools as well.
Fascinating. And sounds like collaboration and connection's a big theme there, Chris, from what you're seeing in industry. I guess, Daniel, you've mentioned there's a range of initiatives in play at Standards AU around these digital demands. Could you elaborate on some of these?
Yeah, sure. I was listening to Chris, and it's interesting, right? So in terms of helping industries move forward. So for us, I guess there's two challenges. One challenge is around how can we get content to the market faster? So we're looking at alternative pathways, which might involve Standards Australia taking more of a lead, of course, in consultation with stakeholders, but establishing projects instead of reacting and relying solely on our network of committees that oversee extensive work programs. I think about it, there's, in some cases, there's a need for that established standards process, which Chris is talking about, especially when there's, higher risk and life safety areas. But, I see that there's also an opportunity, especially where, we want to introduce new technology, or there's an innovation that we want to get to market, or an industry that's having rapid change, potentially waiting 12 to 18 months. We don't have that luxury. So, we're looking at different initiatives around how can we get that content to market quicker? Is there technical specifications that can evolve over time. So it doesn't necessarily have to include every intrinsic detail like you might have in a standard, but we can get it to the market, we can create some comfort around new products and processes, and it can continue to evolve. And of course, from a selfish view in the commercial partnership space, we're partnering. So we're looking at top companies, innovators such as ClearCalcs, where we can get our meaningful IP into that value-add or critical tools to create a better user experience. Now, I have a strong belief that incorporating relevant parts of standards in the digital workflows is going to lead to improved efficiencies, better decision-making. It enables compliance data and intelligent processes so business can actually learn from what they're doing and make better decisions in the future. And that needs to be in that digital format. And of course, at Standards Australia, we've been around for 100 years, but we're experts in facilitating those decisions and developing the content. But we need those innovative partners such as ClearCalcs so we can realise some of those more innovative delivery opportunities.
Yeah, and I think just echoing that as well, this for us was why when we came into the partnership, and we certainly appreciate that you guys had an open ear. For us, such a big piece was also around democratising the access to those standards. I think we talk to obviously our customers and engineers every single day, and one of the really interesting pieces of research or feedback that came back for us was traditionally everyone, well, I guess until hopefully last week when we've launched this, but historically everyone's been purchasing these PDFs or these hard copies one-off, and it was quite fascinating. And I can see Anthony talks about the NCC referencing so many standards in the chat. A really common story that we heard was engineers doing their design work and coming across an obscure standard they didn't have access to or didn't currently purchase. And quite often they would need to look at a single clause or a single section, or they're unsure if they had the value from it that they needed. And so then that creates that whole cost discussion of, well, hey, should I spend my entire margin on this project on a new standard? Will I use it in the long run? Or should I talk to someone else or work around it? It creates that risk and that confidence gap. And so I think for us, we're very excited to be able to offer all the standards from that NCC set, so everything that the NCC is referencing to be able to jump through. But then also, again, critically what Dan said, but how do we bring new materials in? One of the things that we've brought in, mainly because one of our engineers is obsessed with it, is cold form steel, which is still getting more and more established, but a new and innovative material. And we hear similar stories. I have a new job asking for cold form steel, or I have a new job asking for aluminium, for example. The cost barrier to acquiring an additional standard, that has held some engineers back. So I think we're very, very excited. And Dan, I'll continue to push and annoy you to how we can democratize these further. But we believe it's really, really critical to make these things accessible and to make these things cross-referenced, because we don't really see these things. Just like the building is made up of many parts, fundamentally it's made up of many standards, and these things should be able to be easily cross-referenced and linked.
I agree. And I think it's a really good point, right? And I think, and for us at Standards Australia, that involves a bit of a fundamental shift, right? So how we've developed standards is we've developed them to be read. I think we need to kind of revisit that in terms of looking at standards as a bit more of a database, and how are they used and how is it linked with relevant product installation maintenance requirements. And that's going to involve us right from the beginning approaching it differently on how we actually put together those meaningful content and how we structure, write it and draft it. I heard this comment, I was at a conference and I thought it was really funny, where they said that trying to turn standard or atomize it to data at XML is like trying to turn a hamburger back into a cow. It's very difficult. So, for us, again, we have to, right from the beginning of the life cycle in standards development, work with our committees to make sure at the end it's a product that can be fit for purpose.
Yeah, fantastic. And I see there, Daniel, the core piece there, right, is how might we deliver that innovative user experience, from an engineer in the field's lens to support that speed to market to make sure that those standards are being effectively used. What are some of the impacts that you see, for the AEC industry as a whole, Daniel, when and now some of these initiatives are starting to really roll out?
Yeah, it's a good question. So obviously I haven't worked as an engineer or in the construction sector, but in my discussions with people in the field, I can only imagine how challenging it is to be or to have to gather data from different databases, different sources, maintaining an audit trail for the millions of different components for all the different projects. Again, I had a conversation with an engineer who really emphasized to me the importance of having quick access to information and adhering to standards requirements in a sensible workflow, because otherwise they're just making it up. It's a guessing game. And then when you have projects that have 250,000 system structures and components that need to be validated, getting that wrong can be a costly outcome in terms of time or rework. So again, that's why I see really like partnering with ClearCalcs and getting the relevant industry standards and the relevant content into the digital workflows is so important and can make a positive impact. So we can get the relevant checks embedded or prompts when people actually need it. It's going to mean businesses have better decision-making processes. They're going to be much more efficient, faster, and be able to record compliance. And at the end of it, maybe do some real-time data analysis at the end. So we see kind of improved practices. And that's going to have flow-on effects in terms of not only are the businesses going to have productivity gains, but hopefully we see the entire construction sector benefit from it as well.
Yeah, that importance of digital workflows, right? That crossover into almost physical workflows in our day-to-day, is what we're grappling with here around revolutionizing this access. From the boots on the ground perspective, Chris, what are you hearing from users that are designed to increase the access here to standards?
Generally excitement, some skepticism, but hopefully we'll convert the skeptics. But look, I think from a few different areas, it's been interesting hearing in particular the perspective of senior engineers when we're talking through this. And I think one of the common themes that we've heard there is excitement from them when it comes to training up their juniors. So there's a strong hesitation, and rightly so, with senior engineers bringing juniors or those new to industry in and dropping them straight onto calculators or tools, for example, because quite often these things can be black boxes. They might not explain where it's coming from, and it's very easy to garbage in and garbage out. So I think for them, the ability for them to, and I know Susan will certainly show a demo shortly, but the ability to atomize and be able to say, well, I'm not sure about moment capacity in a timber beam, take minute clause 3.1.2 and instantly sort of duck in and duck out, and I guess have that atomized access. There's a lot of excitement. And I think certainly we've partnered with a lot of our customers in terms of putting this together and looking at how they're currently working and I guess trying to adapt that into a digital workflow. And one of the really common things that we saw that surprised us was how often engineers were copy and pasting and screenshotting information out of standards and creating their own little compendiums digitally, and or grabbing their hard copies and putting little post-it tabs in. A lot of that was driven by them saying, well, hey, I'm not reading, as Dan said, the standard every single day, but I am quite often referring to table 2.1 or different capacity factors or whatever else it is. I need quick access to that. And that comes back into our view of why we've focused on things like being able to hyperlink to certain standards, why you're able to get to them from certain digital documents, why we're bringing in more features like bookmarking, for example, because we're looking and saying, well, what are people already doing? How do we make that a digital workflow? How do we make it even easier? I guess remove those barriers of you going, oh, do I really want to go and track down my PDF? Do I really want to go and log in? It's just really putting that information there, because just like if you're at home and the bag of potato chips is at eye level, or if the bag of potato chips is too high, if it's at eye level, you're more likely to have it. So hopefully in this instance, the potato chips are standards and we're putting them at eye level, so you're more likely to duck in more often.
Yeah, and that's directly to Daniel's point earlier, right? How do we help people access these more regularly when they need them, rather than finding
exactly right. And hopefully, I think some of the things we're excited for as well, that we're now in discussions with our customers about, is how we can layer institutional knowledge. So I can see Anthony's talking about the fact that his standards are full of post-it notes, but a lot of that's his markup. That's trapped IP.
Yeah.
So if we come back to this concept of why are we lagging from a digitization and automation perspective, it's because so often we are islands of excellence. So how do we get that out of Anthony's book? How do we get that not only into a digital format that he's able to easily access, but also able to easily share? And how do we then also, on top of that, allow companies and larger teams to be able to share those sorts of technical notes and commentary, and why? How do we then allow that commentary to come back to people like Susan, for example, working on those embedded pipelines, and say, this is the data of how it's being used. This is the commentary of why. These are the real world applications of any changes that you're considering, rather than bringing them. And they bring in the people sitting on these committees. Committees are very smart and bring in amazing institutional knowledge, but there are data gaps. They're not getting the full view of the market. We're hopeful that with these sorts of things, we can start to ladder all this information back upwards.
I'll just add to that too, because I think it's a really good point, right? So I 100% agree in terms of, around that flexibility. And I think where we want to get to is not just having words, so from standards, but it's the insights. So tell me how and why, and give me the tools to actually be able to implement what I need to do. And I think that's where, partnering obviously with ClearCalcs, that's where we can start to really enrich the standards content, and then we can build layers of value on top of that meaningful knowledge. And it's going to make people, it's easier to make decisions and do their job, and they'll see the value and be willing to invest. And I'm kind of really excited about that opportunity.
Amazing, Daniel. And that concept of enriching content and context on top of that meaningful knowledge, right? Sounds like a really powerful step forward. You're starting to deliver some green shoots in industry here. What are you most excited about moving forward?
Well, I guess for me, so we've predicted that we're going to have about 9,000 new standards over the next decade. So with that, there's going to be a significant amount of new knowledge. There's going to be new opportunities for products, for solutions, where Standards Australia and working with others can help create new markets, strengthen industries. I'm excited about the technology that we've started to talk about, AI-powered assistants that might provide trusted, accurate insights using the standards knowledge. As Chris said, we're not quite there yet, but these are the opportunities, and these are real game changers for businesses and individuals on how we can actually deliver greater value, save time, create greater efficiencies. There's endless possibilities. Is there technology where you can use your phone to verify a product against standards information, really maximizing the efficiency? Of course, it needs to be accurate. It comes with risk, and we need to approach it sensibly. But these type of things can really change industries. And I'm really excited about our collaboration with ClearCalcs. It's two passionate organisations that's really trying to do a good thing for the engineering construction sector. As Chris said, we've got different ideas and potentially different expertise, but bringing that together and collaborating and working together, I think we can produce some really remarkable outcomes. So I'm very excited about building on what we've already created with ClearCalcs.
Sounds like you're going to have to create a lot of partnerships if you're looking to do 9,000 new standards over the next 10 years to get them out there into the people's hands. You might be in a job.
Yeah.
You might be in a job for another 10 years too. Oh, very good, very good. And Chris, starting to be able to deliver real world impact with these innovations from Standards Australia, how bright is that future?
Look, it's incredibly exciting for us, right? We started the business 7 years ago, and literally on day one, the first thing I did was opened an Australian standard in a PDF, which I then had to control, find, search, and sat there and said, we need to get these things into ClearCalcs. It's a logical endpoint. So we don't really, I use the word endpoint, but we sort of see it as a starting point. There's a lot more that we want to do. One of the guiding principles for the work that we do, one of the things we say a lot is that the value of an engineer is in thinking, not in doing. The problem is, especially with a lot of tools and how we work, most engineers spend a lot of their time doing, not thinking. You sort of think, especially as projects, timelines get tighter and tighter and tighter, it's, I'll make it a little bit bigger, I'll work a little bit faster. Whereas really what we want to be doing is making it as efficient as possible for the what we call the boring bits, or the more procedural, and give those engineers the perfectly more than qualified to sit there and say, how do I make this better? How do I construction phase it better? How do I bring in new materials? How do I be more innovative? How do I save my customer money, time, whatever else it is? And so hopefully for this, we see standards as not only being a way to build confidence in methodologies and materials, but to give engineers, and by bringing it in with the calculators, more of that confidence so they can work at speed with that. And I think one of the really inspiring and exciting things for us, and then one thing we're hoping we're helping contribute for when it comes to whether it's materials or methodologies, we bring new standards in, hopefully to help move things forward, to make it safer, to make it more sustainable. There's a very large conversation, obviously, at the moment when it comes to housing affordability at the moment, and how many of these things that we're getting in. Our real hope is that we can, by building this confidence, but by making these standards more democratized, by helping people have that confidence of the new things that they're using, really play a role in challenges such as that affordability, challenges in that sustainability, for example, and saying, well, okay, how do we do things a little bit better? And then how do we do that in a communal way?
Yeah, unreal. It sounds like that future is bright, and you're very excited, Chris, about what's next in store there. Happy to wrap up the, I guess, formalities of standards team and ClearCalcs team discussing how we're going to revolutionize access to construction standards, and shift into Q&A, if that's okay with yourself, Dan and Chris, if you've got nothing else to add.
I'm more than happy.
Sounds good.
Awesome. Got a question here from Stephen. He was curious about, obviously, if we are digitizing standards, taking hamburgers and reversing them back to cows, does standards have a view on how this might help support the committees improve their standards over time if we took the data and reversed it back into making the cow better?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Short answer is yes. So it opens up significant opportunities, right? So if we can better understand customer usage around standards content, where do they spend their time, potentially where are their compliance implementation issues, that's going to mean that we can feed that back to our committees. We can develop and improve and evolve our standards content. And then we can also look at, okay, well, what else could we do in these areas? So, for an example, if there is challenges around compliance, what other value-add solutions? Is there online training that we could also develop and maybe bundle up with the standards content? Is there insight pieces, commentary? What else could we do to help industry? But we need that data, that insights And by going digital, by working with like the likes of ClearCalcs, and we get those insights, and then we can feed that back to our committees that, of course, are very keen to make sure that the standards content is fit for purpose.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
Interestingly common refrain that we had, is especially with the new NCC coming in, just awareness and recognition from engineers and industry that the standards are changing, but also a question of, so what's changed? Let me know.
Exactly. Yeah, it's that insight piece, right? It's tell me what I need to know. And that's, again, it opens up so many opportunities.
Now, there's a bit of a theme there running around, education and access. We're talking digitization, education, access. It's been mentioned earlier around like junior engineers. Chris, how do you see that evolving, and what does that mean, I guess, at like an industry level for people interacting with standards?
Yeah, look, I mean, as we've discussed, we're excited about the fact that people are able to easily duck back in. I'm excited as well about this concept of digitizing Anthony's post-it notes, for example, and making it easier for those junior engineers to be able to access and learn, and I guess disseminating some of that coaching that otherwise might only happen on a one-to-one or just a tacit, I've done it myself basis. And then I think at a broader level, when it comes to education overall and what we're seeing, I think one of the really inspiring things for me was when we demoed this to one of our customers, one of the engineers came to me afterwards and said, I never thought someone would tell me this. He said, I do a standard study session on a Saturday where I sit down and I review my standards and I try and get a little bit better. The ability that you guys have put in to be able to search just based on keyword terms, that's going to dramatically make it easier for me to do that. I'm going to sit there and I'm going to be able to sort of just ask a question of the document and get better. Now, I don't know whether he was saying that because he was in his manager's earshot and he wanted to sound good, but I choose to believe that, he's excited about learning more and getting better in his profession and producing better designs. And so I think I'm excited. I'd say it's early days here for that, but certainly excited to keep hearing stories from our customers, how they want to use in other engineers and really work out what we can do to drive it further.
Fantastic. It's probably a good segue. One of the requests was, do we get to see a demo of, I guess, what an example of some of this revolutionary access to construction standards looks like? Atty, if you'd give us the pleasure with the audio on, that would be great to run us through a little reel of what this might look like. And as you guys are watching, feel free to put in some questions and we can follow up with some questions afterwards as well.
I will do that right now, Alex. Let me know if you've got my screen and the audio.
Gotcha. Full screen would be awesome.
Standards in ClearCalcs, the game-changing platform that integrates Australian standards directly into your engineering workflow. Tired of scrolling through endless PDFs? ClearCalcs offers a seamless, rich web view, allowing you to filter and access the Australian standards you need with ease. With standards at your fingertips, click on a clause in ClearCalcs 40+ engineering calculators and instantly be taken to the relevant reference, making your engineering calculations faster and more accurate than ever. And that's just the beginning. Save even more time with hyperlinking between clauses, advanced natural language search, and sharing capabilities to further enhance your experience. Imagine finding the exact clause or equation you need with a simple query. Instead of the outdated control and find methodology, our advanced natural language search revolutionizes the way you interact with standards. Collaborate efficiently by sharing direct links to specific clauses or equations. ClearCalcs even includes these links on printed reports, ensuring easy access to relevant standards for you and your team. Ready to experience the future of engineering calculations? Sign up now and discover the power of ClearCalcs integration with Australian standards.
Always a bit of fun writing a script for one of those. I apologize for the sensationalist language, but we're excited about it.
I could see Jim's eyes were lighting up there as he was seeing things click between clauses, and very good. Well, if nobody has any further questions, I'd be happy to wrap things up there for today. Daniel, do you have any further comments or discussions?
No, I think it's been a really good discussion. It's been a great opportunity to kind of showcase the partnership. So I hope everybody's enjoyed it. And thanks to you, Alex, for moderating for us. Yeah, it's been a really good discussion.
Fantastic, Chris.
No, just echoing that, really appreciate everyone's time. And I think the thing I would say is these things only move forward if we hear back. You know, we're only as good as the things that we hear. So would really appreciate for anyone that's had a look today, please send us your thoughts, you know, help@clearcalcs.com, reach out to us, let us know what you're thinking, let us know how we might make it better for you. I've got a regular meeting with Daniel. I annoy him regularly. So we're another voice of how we can make things constantly better. And hopefully we can be discussing more innovation on an ongoing basis.
Amazing. Thanks, team. Thank you, everyone. Have a great rest of your afternoon, and we'll see you soon.